Hey everybody, I'm Ron.
And I'm James.
And welcome to 10 Backward, your sort of maybe weekly, we do this weekly, right?
We're getting better at the weekly part, I think.
I like the fact that that we can do this kind of like on that weekly basis, so it's just like watching the episode. I mean, so many people these days with their Netflix binging and everything, you never hear anybody about anybody Netflix purging, where it's like, hey, the new season of whatever, Jessica Jones starts on Friday. Better forget every episode of Peaky Blinders I've ever watched.
Wait, you've actually watched Peaky Blinders?
Oh my gosh, man. You gotta, when the new episode drops, man, if you're like a Nick Cave fan, you gotta watch that shit.
Oh, really? Okay.
With your red right hand.
It's always been like hoving in my field of vision, but I've never taken the time to actually sit down and watch it because I'm spending a lot of time watching things like Masks.
Oh, God. Oh, wait. Are you talking about the animated series from the 80s?
No,
with like the vehicles that turn, like the vehicles where it's like, oh, it's a motorcycle, but oh, it's also a helicopter.
I wish I was. Little known fact about this episode: it first aired on my birthday in 1994.
Oh my gosh! James,
I know.
This is the worst birthday gift ever.
It is. I wanted to meet Hulk Hogan, and my mom was like, "Here's a Data episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Enjoy."
Yeah, here's a Data-heavy episode where Brent Spiner gets to like act like a crazy person for 42 minutes.
You know, I felt like whoever wrote this episode was like, "Hey, Brent, can you do a Q impression?"
Yeah.
And he said yes. And then
like,
this was the episode.
It was like, hey, didn't we hire you because you did a bunch of squirrely voices on Night Court? Can you do that here?
And he said, "Let me think. How many characters do you need?"
Yeah, it's rough, and and what makes it rougher is Joe Menosky, who wrote this episode. He's written tons of other Trek stuff, and it's all like way better than this.
Oh, really? So, like this is the bottom for Joe?
It is, because he, I think he did the teleplay or something for like Darmok. So that's equally sort of great. I mean, that's the, like Darmok at Janagra, or whatever. It's like people love that episode. So he, should, get a little respect for that. So because he wrote Darmok, I'll give him a pass for Masks. But yes, it is so damn painful.
I can't even like wrap my I can't even talk either. Can't wrap my mind around like who thought this, especially with how the story evolves from beginning to end. Like this is what they had. In the last season, they went with something that was just, this is creative, but also this episode was so counter. It falls flat so many places for me.
Well, and it's like a huge like effects episode, and not just an effects episode, but sets. This had to be like a really expensive episode to do here in the 7th season of the damn show. I would have spent the money on like maybe having a better cast party. Oh, when you wrapped everything.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So, all right. Do you want to launch into things? Do we? Sure. Let me take the teaser this week.
Go for it.
The cold open.
Oh, definitely.
So, Counselor Troy, because I guess part of her job is overseeing like kids' classrooms and stuff like that, and offering help. Because I guess she's now an educator. It's whatever very sort of weak. Plot element that they needed to create to put her into the story.
Ron, she's a woman, and everybody knows women make better teachers. So put her in a classroom because she's a woman.
Yeah, because I look at her and I'm thinking school marm. Right. So I guess. So
it's got to be the hair.
It's got to be the hair. So she's walking around this classroom. She's sort of like critiquing kids on their like little projects and things like that. And for whatever reason, Data is in there with a bunch of like like kind of grade schoolers like working on a project, and so I think the idea for the project is it's like you have to sculpt something that reminds you of music, and so he makes like a like what's that symbol called? It's I can't remember.
The G clef.
Yeah, okay, so he makes a G clef.
Treble clef, sorry, treble clef.
Treble clef. And she's like, well, that's kind of a literal interpretation. I mean more like how music makes you feel. And so he's like, oh, all right, I can see that. So he's working on some stuff, and so he sculpts this. He's kind of confused about what he's supposed to do, so he's like, it's the vibrations of music, and he's like, nah, it's not really that. So the treble clef thing gets thrown out, and so he's like, okay, well, oh yeah, but his first project was he makes a pad, so he sculpts like a replica of one of those the iPads that they're carrying around,
right?
And he's like super like excited that it's like accurate within like 1.3% tolerances, and she just shits all over it. She's like, yeah, she's just like, yeah, this is interesting and all, but make something real.
She's like, a computer makes another computer. I don't really care.
Yeah, it's like I can get a replicator to do this. So anyway, Riker is like down there, calls him, gets him on the horn, and he's like, hey, come on up to the bridge. So the Enterprise is traveling out just some random sector in space, and there's a rogue comet that is actually like a pretty cool special effect for this to be so late in the show and not wanting to spend a bunch of money.
Right.
But it's like this huge comet is going along, and you could see like all the ice kind of flying off of it and things like that. It's a really cool effect. And but it's not on any Federation star charts. So they're like, well, it appears to have started in this like faraway system. It's like 2 sectors away. It's been traveling for like 87 million years. So they're like, hey, we need to go ahead and do like a full sensor analysis, figure out what's going on with this thing. So they start scanning it. And because of course this is just how this goes, the bridge gets like, there's this little bright flashy light and stuff like that, and then it kind of fades, and everybody's like, like, what was that? And Data's like, oh, it appears to be like a sensor echo, and there's like distortion inside the comet's inner core, and they're like, well, maybe we need to investigate that a little more. So down in Troy's quarters, Dr. Crusher shows up, and she's kind of like, I guess, pawing through Deanna's stuff, and he's like, hey, what's this strange and unusual plant you have in your it's not a plant. It's like a statue.
It's like
or something.
A totem of destruction. It's like,
yes, it's like, weird. What's the strange and weird object you've got? Da-doop. And Troy's like, I don't know. I've never seen it before. Maybe it was left here by like a secret admirer or something like that. So they're like, oh, that's kind of weird. So they go ahead and they take off, and this little statue is sitting there, and all of a sudden, like there's like a strange symbol that appears on it, and you see this symbol multiple times across the episode. It's like a circle with like some lines around it, and then it drops us to the credits sequence.
Yeah, and you're right about like, why is Troy there? Because right in Act 1, she's back in this classroom teaching kids how to like reach their emotions to build the correct or whatever they're trying to build within their art. And Data's there, and he starts building this mask out of clay, and Troy's like, wow, that was really creative. How did you come up with that? And he's like, I don't know, just kind of popped in my head, so I'm just going to do this. And they're
didn't have any connection with that like weird like light that scanned through the Enterprise or anything.
Not, no. So then this little conversation gets interrupted by one of the kids who's like, teacher, my match game is broken on the computer. And
yeah, you got Angry Birds on this shit, teach.
And so these strange symbols are like popping up, and it's Data's like looking at this thing, and they take this all to engineering, where Data, Geordi, and I think Riker's there, and they're trying to figure out what these symbols are because they're not listed in any kind of database that they have. And I don't know how, but LaForge is like, wait, this has been downloaded into the Enterprise from the sensor array, and it's via the sensor array through this thing into our replicator systems, and it's reconfiguring the ship. And Riker is like, well, I don't know why Riker would think this, but he's like, well, I think it has something to do with the sensor echo from earlier. And LaForge is like, well, we don't know that. Calm down. Leave the thinking to the brains, all right, Riker?
Yeah.
So Riker's first...
If I need somebody to put a leg up on something, we'll call you. But otherwise, leave this to the engineering folks.
And Riker's first thing is like, maybe we should shoot the thing and melt the layers of the frozen layers off this comet. And so LaForge is like, I don't know, maybe, but we need to figure out what's going on with these symbols. And Data is like, all of a sudden, like, this is weird. I can read these symbols and I know what they mean. And look, this one means things like road and message and screen and messenger and death. This sun symbol. Mm-hmm. And then so they use this. So they go to the bridge and using a phaser beam, they evaporate the icy shell around the comet, revealing what to me looked like one of those wooden puzzle blocks.
Yeah, it looks like a really like a Jenga kind of structure.
Yeah, it's like one of those things you buy at like Barnes and Noble when you're not buying books. Mm-hmm. It has like the metal ring, and you got to get the ring around the wooden area. Otherwise, you're just going to get upset and just break it.
Sure,
that's what it looks like to me, at least. But yeah, that's. It's
like some sort of temple floating out in space.
I guess. I mean, okay, like I understand like the idea that this is a comet and it's been floating forever, but that perfect circular thing just kind of is weird that it all attached to this thing. Like you'd think with that kind of shape it would at least be oblong, but it's a perfect sphere. So I mean, it must have been pulling things in to make it that way. I mean, how big is this thing? It looked like it was about this, like just a bit bigger than the Enterprise.
Yeah, it looked huge.
Yeah,
just floating out there in space.
But yeah, that's it for Act 1, and we slam right into Act 2.
It. Yeah, we do. We slam right into Act 2. Oh, actually, yeah, no, sorry. I got confused for a second because I was watching this and my brain liquefied and like
Data, are you okay?
Poured out of my. I gotta add. Is this what it feels like when people go crazy watching this episode? Is this what it feels like?
I think so.
Because. So the scan reveals that this thing is like super old and it's made out of some weird material.
Unobtainium, probably.
It's made out of vibranium and unobtainium and like, I don't know, like just a mountain of cocaine, I would only assume. But they're like, oh, well, this is the object, this temple or whatever the hell this thing is. It's like, yeah, it's definitely responsible for all those symbols that are popping up on the computer because it was a carrier wave that kind of came back and reprogrammed all of our replicators, and it's reprogramming our computer systems so that way that I guess we can learn more about this like dead civilization. So Data thinks that this is all just like a huge archive, and LaForge is like, yeah, there seems to be like, like some sort of node configuration over there. So yeah, it could very much be like a big SQL database. I don't know, but we better go ahead and do a level 1 diagnostic on your positronic net. But of course, that's going to require plugging the computer directly into the computer. And anybody who knows anything about computers is, hey, we got this computer that's got the virus on it. Hey, let's just hook it up to the rest of our network and see what happens. So they plug Data in to the Enterprise's computer that's infected with this like alien virus craziness. And they're just hoping for the best, I guess. So we cut to Picard in his ready room. Okay. And he's sitting there and he's investigating all these objects that have been popping up around the Enterprise because he's got a whole collection of these things now. And they all kind of look different. They're mostly cubes and stuff. And it's, it looks kind of vaguely Aztec or kind of Mesoamerican. Maybe that's
with
more
the pan flute that's been playing this entire episode, I'd have to say it's the Mayan civilization or something.
Yeah, but it's they're looking at him, and Riker's like, "Oh, this is all this primitive crap," and Picard just grabs the scruff of his like duty uniform and is like chugging in his face about like he's like, "You think that looks primitive, brother, but it's like these things are ceremonial in nature and deceptively primitive."
He does. He gets so angry. He gets so like. He gets more like aggressive than I thought. He was just gonna have a conversation. And he's like, "Oh no, these are not the same thing that you're thinking they are, man."
Listen, I didn't go on all those adventures with Bosch for you to tell me about all these ancient, sort of artifacts.
Have I told you about the time with the Stargazer? I'll tell you about my time with the Stargazer.
So, but Riker is looking these things over too, and he recognizes, or he is the one that makes the connection about like, this like sunburst symbol that's on these objects. It's the exact same thing we saw on the computer earlier, and then there's this other object that's on a bunch of the parts that looks like sort of a U-shaped symbol that's got like little blocks in it, and he's like, hey, like these things seem to have some kind of connection, and if you see one, you typically see the other kind of off to the side or in the background. Yeah. So these two symbols must be sort of the key to maybe understanding what this mystery is all about. So cut back down to engineering. Data's hooked up to the computer, and all of a sudden, of course, he experiences this like weird sort of like impulse, or this weird sort of like pulse to his positronic net. And he asks LaForge what I asked you earlier, what it's like. Is this what it feels like when a person is losing their mind? And Data, he can't explain what's going on, but LaForge is like, hey, like, what's the deal? And he's like, I'm different. Like, something has changed. And so LaForge goes over and disconnects him from the main computer. And you've got the effect where they do the thing where you can look and you see the side of Data's head where he's got the hair removed and it's all the little positronic stuff. Well, he looks in there and it looks different. Like, it's like there's a bunch of like kind of different connections and stuff that have like spontaneously appeared on the little circuit board inside of his head. And so he kind of walks around the other side, and Data now has that same sunburst symbol on his forehead. And now this is where the episode goes completely off the rails, with Brent Spiner just getting to do a bunch of goofy ass voices for the next 40 minutes. And he's like, Misaka is waking, and it's like, oh god, give me strength to make it through the rest of this turd.
Yeah, he turns around and he's got the, what is it, like the flag of New Mexico on his forehead.
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
That's what you're going for? And then you start talking like you're Q. Come on, man, come on.
Yeah, I know. It's like he's all like, it's just an excuse for Brent Spiner, who has had to just act like very flat for like this whole series. After probably the second season, when they kind of figured out what Data was going to be, where he wasn't going to be like, I can't use contractions, but I'm going to act like a squirrely ass all the time just because I'm a Pinocchio who doesn't understand humans. It's just, this was an excuse for him to like cut loose, I guess. Because
we need that like 3 or 4 times per season. So in Act 3, Picard goes to engineering because they're figuring out all this stuff is happening, and so Data is sitting on top of like the railing right in front of the core, and he's saying stuff like, "You should feel honored. I don't usually wait for anyone," and Picard's like, "What the hell's going on? Where's Data?" And he's like, "Misaka is waking." He keeps saying that, so Data's like, "No, I'm not Misaka. I'm someone else." And Data's gone. I can't tell you where Data is. So Picard's like, let's get Troy in here. Maybe, I don't know. She's an empath. He's an android. Maybe she can figure this out. I don't know. Which,
she's an empath. He's an android. They're both officers on the Enterprise this fall.
Like, I don't know why.
Brent Spiner does a bunch of squirrely ass
I get
voices.
why he calls her, but it's like she's not going to be able to tell him anything other than, oh yeah, he's different. You can tell that too. So they,
yeah, because I'm so good at being an empath with like people that aren't human or humanoids with emotions.
So yeah, Data starts going into like, well, I'm this guy. I'm from Misaka City, and no one else is like me. And he's just kind of walking around the room, and he like does this recumbent pose on top of the, on top of like one of the tables of buttons, and he's like, just what's going on, Picard? And so then when Troy enters the room, Data like drops to his knees, thinking she is this person, Misaka, and he says something in like a hushed, like, I don't know, like a weird little voice saying, "I am yours." So Picard is like, we're going to keep him to his quarters. Let's put some security out there that can easily be overtaken later. And
right, by the super strong android, right. Yeah.
And so during this during briefing, LaForge pulls up something that he calls a micrograph, but that thing's pretty big. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about it being micro. And he's like, "Oh, this is what's going on in the positronic net." And there's a lot of transformations going on. And Troy's like, "Oh, well, I think this is the android equivalent of multiple personalities." And LaForge is like, I don't know about that, but the transformation is still in process. More people inside of his head might come out. We don't know. So Picard is like, can we access this archive? That's that big glowing ship thing on the outside, so we can figure out what's happening. And so Picard is like, I need to go talk to Data about this. So he goes to Data, and he starts talking to one of the characters and that he's being, and he explains Data as one of the characters is like, Misaka's this queen. She's sleeping all the time. We can't wake her because it's very dangerous. So Picard is like, well, maybe we can keep her asleep so she doesn't destroy everything. And he mentions a name, Corgano, and only Corgano can keep her asleep. So when Picard is like, well, who's Corgano? Can we find him? And that's when Data has a shift and becomes like a small child who's like, I'm scared. I'm afraid. I need your help. And then at that same time, the ship kind of like shifts because a tractor beam now has the ship and the Enterprise can't go anywhere. And at the same time, there's an emergency that Worf, like, I don't know what Worf was doing around, but he's just kind of like, oh, I gotta go. There's an emergency over in 10 Forward. So Data comes back, and or as the character that he originally was, I can't remember his name. It's like Ehat, and he's like, and so as the ship jolts, he's like, Misaka is awake. And so then when we next see Worf kind of shifting over to see what's happening on the other side of the ship, in 10 Forward, there's multiple artifacts just kind of like scattered around the place. So it seems like the ship is starting to transmutate or phase out and something else is phasing in. We really don't know, but it's like these large artifacts are starting to appear in the ship. Yeah.
Right. And a couple points on all this. The second that Data, the super strong, crazy android, started going nuts with multiple personality syndrome, there's a couple people in the Enterprise that know how to turn him off. Like there's some kind of button on his back. I would just be like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and we'll follow up on this at some other point when the ship is not turning into like an Aztec temple and just.
But Geordi's like, no, my micrograph, guys. You got to look at this giant graph called a micrograph.
You know, I was up all night making this micrograph, guys. Come on, dude. Come on, bro. So, but. So there's that, and the whole goofy thing where it's like 10 Forward is now like transforming into one of these temples, and it's like the bulkhead. I think they even make a point of saying that like the bulkhead, like the actual outside of the Enterprise, has been transformed into this like stone temple. And it's like Worf and the security team just like walk straight into 10 Forward.
They should have been sucked out.
And I'm just thinking, I'm like, Rock is just not known for its, airtightness It's I'm just thinking that it's like, yeah, if it's sitting there, it's probably okay, but I'm just not going to run out there. And it's like, and how many emergencies do you really have in 10 forward that don't involve like Guinan running out of like crab
I
cakes?
wrote down, I'm like, I'll bet Worf is going to be useless this episode.
Yeah, it's he's going to run around and tell us what's happening.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, what else? Again, I was like, this whole thing's creepy and doesn't really do anything. Like, it just seems like this script was a love letter to Brent Spiner's character work and not anything else.
Yeah, for him to do a bunch of squirrely voices. It's there's an episode coming up, not to get sidetracked, but there's an episent coming up called Fistful of Datas that is not only an Alexander episode, but is also an episode where Brent Spiner plays multiple parts and gets to do a bunch of squirrely voices.
Fistful of Datas.
Yeah, so it's going to be, but at least that is comic. It's played for laughs. This is supposed to be like a straight up kind of like we don't know what's going on, but there's a spooky thing and somehow Data is going to be our key to solving this. And it just is awful. If you haven't seen it, it's just awful. I watched this with Dana the other night because we were getting ready for this, and she was just like, there's like 7 seasons of this show. Why did you pick that one? And I was like, because James made me. Because James told me this is the one we were doing.
Okay, we can just stop this and we'll do Encounter at Farpoint next.
Oh no! See, it's but still, on the grand scheme of things, we're still streets ahead.
Oh yeah, streets ahead indeed.
Streets ahead. So, Act 4 though. LaForge, Troy, and Picard are investigating all these artifacts and inscriptions, and they're trying to figure out what the connection is with the sun symbol that they saw earlier. And they're like, okay, well, now we're realizing that this sun symbol represents Masaka. And we see this U-base symbol on the back, so maybe that represents like the opposite of whatever the Masaka symbol is. So maybe it's just as simple as like a night and day cycle for this civilization that kind of uses a lot of nature metaphor for, I guess, part of their sort of mythology. But of course, while they're working on all this type of stuff, they realized that the artifacts were not actually beamed onto the Enterprise. Rather, the transporters and replicators inside the Enterprise, as you said earlier, were actually making these things. And it's not just because they're like, well, what are all these plants doing here? How are there plants? Because the replicators cannot replicate live tissue or something like that, which has always been, I guess, sort of a limitation of, so you can't like, oh, I fell in the replicator and now there's 8,000 copies of me. So they're like, okay, well, whatever this technology is on this thing can also manipulate DNA. So it's taking DNA from things inside the Enterprise and turning them into stuff too. So while they're working on all this, Worf hops in and he's like, hey, just wanted to let you know, part of Duct 12 is now an aqueduct. And it's like, okay, I guess it's the Romans will be pleased. So,
can you tell me why that the water didn't short out any of the electrical equipment up there?
It's especially with stuff like randomly transforming into things. You would think. I mean, the turbo lifts sure seem to still work really well for just like, it's like, okay, we've got this thing, and it's like all of a sudden the turbo lift slams into like a giant like sandstone block. That never happens in the episode, but that would absolutely happen if this was my luck. So they're like, okay, well, here's what we gotta have to do. Picard's like, I don't think we have any kind of alternative but to destroy this archive before it completely redoes our entire ship. But of course, the weapons control systems are not working. So Worf is like, hey, why don't we just reconfigure a photon torpedo and do a manual launch? And I'm thinking, a manual launch of a photon torpedo? What do? You have a couple guys in spacesuits go out there and just kind of shove it over there? But somehow this is some kind of manual launch for photon torpedoes. So LaForge and Worf are down there in engineering. And they're putting it all together, and they press the buttons, and all of a sudden, like, it stops working. The power turns off. And they're like, what happened? So LaForge goes over and opens up the torpedo, and it's just full of snakes.
Yeah, this goes from being masks to snakes on a space plane.
Yes. And it's immediately what I thought about was that thing in Futurama where, like, Earth is going to get destroyed, and they have the Martian stone spaceship, and they're trying to figure out what all this stuff does. And Zach Brannigan reaches up and, like, presses one of the buttons, and it opens up a little door, and just snakes fall out. And he's like, all right, snake door. I know what that one does now. It's just like, so here's this torpedo, and it's just full of snakes. They're like, man, what are you going to do? So at the same time this is going on, little parts of engineering start, like, bleeping out and turning into, like, you know, kind of the stonework and things like that. And there's, like, some palm trees that appear out of nowhere and stuff. And so they're like, yeah, we probably ought to get out of here before we're turned into, like, llamas or something. So they go to leave, and all of a sudden, like, you know, one of the effects people turns on a fire bar. So they're like, oh, there's fire, so we can't get out. So they beam them out. Okay. So cuts up to the bridge, and they make, like, an offhand comment where they're like, well, I guess we could have this meeting in the observation lounge, but it's been turned into a swamp.
And did you notice they couldn't afford any extras for the scene because it's just the main crew?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is just the primary players that are there. And so it's funny because they kind of pan back across the bridge, and the ops station where Data normally sits, instead of being the chair there and stuff, it's just like a giant block. It's just a giant stone block that's just sitting there with a couple palm fronds sitting on top of it. It's like, what are you gonna do? I guess our whole ship runs on pyramid technology now. And so LaForge is like, you know, I've kind of estimated that the archive has transformed 20% of the ship into whatever this city or whatever it's trying to recreate. We never see, keep in mind, we never see a shot outside the Enterprise. Right. Like, this is all, we just see the things happening inside. I can just imagine how crazy it would look.
I think it would look a lot like the archive itself.
Yes, it would probably, like, it's trying to make a copy of itself or something. So, but Dr. Crusher comes up, and I kind of spilt the beans earlier, but it was like, it's using molecular, sort of transmogrification to, like, make anything and anything. Anything's possible with science. And so that's how all the alien plant life and artifacts are showing up on the Enterprise. And so, but if it keeps going on, it's going to be completely transformed into an alien city, is what they believe. So LaForge is like, hey, we're going to have to do something. Maybe we can, since we're still in communication with the archive through this energy beam and through the tractor beam, maybe we can, I can go out there and locate whatever this transformation program is and turn it off or make it flip everything back. But Picard's like, I don't think that's the answer. I think it is going to have to come down to finding out who this Masaka bitch is. and so Picard's like, and the only way for me to do that is to go talk to Brent Spiner as he chews the scenery. So he runs down there to Data's, kind of his quarters. And now he's like an old man. And he's sitting there at, like, this little stone altar that's got, like, a flame coming up. And he's like, I'm so cold. I'm so cold. Turn up the damn heat. Give me a cardigan. And so, and it's like, Picard's like, who's you? And he's like, I'm the old guy, and Masaka's my daughter. And Picard's like, well, where can we find Masaka? Because I need to talk to her because we got to figure out what's going on. And the old guy's like, only Corgano can talk to Masaka. And so he's like, all right, I suppose. And so Picard is like, well, what do we got to do? And he's like, you've got to build Masaka's temple. That's the only way to get her attention. And so he's like, well, how do we do that? And he's basically like, don't do anything. So he's sitting there talking to him and things like that. And it's like, and so Brent Spiner does like, oh, here's another voice. And it's like, some other character. And it's like, I can help you make him show up. But you got to know the symbol to kind of call her. And so one of the little personalities is telling him how to do the symbol, and halfway through he stops, and he's like, oh no, Masaka's found me. And then it switches back to the old man, and the old man like finishes and shows him the rest of the symbol. And they're just talking about the cruelty of Masaka and all this type of shit. And it just goes on way too long. It's like, just tell us how to fix this.
Yeah. I don't even know anymore, man.
I don't
Act 4, I was like, did they stop trying? I don't understand, like, what the point of all this is. And as we even get into Act 5, you're just like, you know that this is going to end, of course, but you don't think it's going to pay off. I never thought this would pay off. Mm-mm. So, did you have anything else to say about Act 4?
God, no. Okay. No, I've said enough already.
So, here we go. We're coming to the home stretch. We're on the bridge where all these stations are just now stone and vines and palm fronds. And LaForge says he has found where the transformations are coming from, but he's worried that the way things are are transmogrifying, we're looking at a giant chunk of rock that the Enterprise will turn into at some point. So they're all in this. So I think it's like Troy, Worf, and Picard are in this corridor when they enter a specific symbol into the computer, because they think they're realizing if we start entering some of these symbols into this transformation program, we can figure out like what's going to happen to, like, we can transmogrify certain parts, so we can, like, I don't know, build Masaka's temple, so we can figure out who Masaka is, mm-hmm. and get all this fixed. So they send off the death symbol, which is the mask that Data had made earlier, but it's like a bright mm-hmm. sunbeam, and they send it in, and part of this hallway turns into Masaka's temple, and they find all the sun symbols and the U-shaped symbols, and they're starting to talk about, well, you know, maybe it's like a sun and moon thing, and its counterparts, and it's like one can only rule while the other one's down, and when the other one comes up, the other one is not. Weird balances. And so we cut to Data sitting against the wall, and when the temple appears, his eyes, he has his eyes closed. When the temple appears, his eyes shoot open. He walks over to the shelf, and he picks up the mask that he made earlier and puts it on, and just, of course, has no problem incapacitating the two guards that have been guarding him this whole time. Like, we knew it was going to happen.
No offense, they didn't even have the door locked.
Oh, no.
They just had they had the door unlocked. They're just standing outside.
Yeah. So they're inside this temple, and they find a prominent U-shaped symbol, and Picard really starts hamming it up about the sun and the moon and who Masaka and Corgano are as a whole. And suddenly, it's Data. He comes in wearing the mask of Masaka, and Picard is like, "Hey,
well, hold on," because it's like they're sitting there having this conversation, and there's like this like thunderclap or something, and it just appears. That's right.
Up there. Yeah, you're right. It's weird because there's nobody there's nobody there, and then there's that big like weird shakeup, and then Data's just sitting there with the mask on. And when Picard introduces himself, Data as this Masaka character is like, "Get out of here! I don't want to talk to you." And so they're back on the bridge again, or there might be an engineering. I think they're on the bridge. And LaForge has found the moon symbol in the archive, and Picard is like, "Send that over. We want to see what happens." But everybody's like, "I don't know about this. You could totally destroy the Enterprise." And Picard is like, "I don't give a damn. We're gonna do this. We're doing it my way." Like, kind of mm-hmm. like,
he's like, "Trust me, bro. Trust me, bro."
So he sends it, and this mask just appears out of nowhere, and nothing else really happens except the mask appears. So the Picard is like, "This must be Corgano because of the symbol." So Picard, mm-hmm. we're coming to what everybody hopes for, which is a Data versus Picard showdown. So Picard puts on the mask, goes into the temple, and of course Data as Masaka recognizes Corgano, and they start talking about, oh, I thought I was alone, and I don't have anyone to share the sky with. And Picard is like, oh, you're not complete without me, and you love the hunt. And she's like, yeah, but I'm tired now, so I'm going to begin the hunt later. And that's when Data as Masaka falls asleep, and the ship has been transformed back to its original state.
Yeah, it just instantly wipes across, like, because it's very obviously Patrick Stewart standing in front of like a green screen, because it's like the background just goes,
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's back to the hallway again.
And so then Data's just standing there, and he doesn't have his New Mexico flag forehead anymore. And Picard is like, hey, are you okay? And Data's like, oh, I don't know what happened, but I think I'm fine. I'm gonna miss all those people in my head. And so LaForge he disables this transformation program, and they dispatch an archaeological fleet to study it and try to get more information about the civilization, but we never hear about that, as we've known from the next couple of episodes. So Picard holds the mask, because the mask is left over, and he's like, well, I thought everything was supposed to disappear. And Data was like, oh, no, I made that mask, and I just wanted to kind of paint over it and kind of keep it.
Yeah, it's like he painted it, and it's like, as a keepsake of this thing where we almost all died.
Yeah. And so Data confesses that there were like thousands of people inside me, and without them I kind of feel alone, but relieved in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And Picard goes into his whole thing like, well, I know you don't know what it's like to be human, but at least you know what it's like to be human by having experienced what an entire civilization is.
Mm.
And that's it.
Yeah, thank God. It graciously ends at this point.
I got so angry when that was the resolution. Just like, here, put on this mask and go talk to Data.
Yeah, that's
really,
and it's
really?
He's so flippant about it too, because he's like, well, if this unknown civilization is anything like all the other unknown civilizations that I've researched, I'm just gonna wing it. And it's just like, this is a lot of people's lives to just take a chance that this plan is gonna work. It seems very un-Picard.
Is this when you control S when you're writing your screenplay? You're like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I care. I'm just going to put this on and see what goes on.
I'm just going to see what happens. But it's so crazy because, and this is kind of a thing. And as I made a note of this because Data makes a point of saying a couple of things here where it's kind of like, that, it's this thing where I had thousands of people inside me, and it's I'm empty now, but it's kind of like a relief. And I was just like, that's like every meal I've ever had at a Mexican restaurant. It's like once I'm empty, I'm just so relieved. No, it's the real thing is that Data is supposed to contain like all the logs and memories of all of the colonists that were part of this place where Nooney and Soong built him,
mm-hmm.
which they conveniently forget. With this whole thing,
that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so because the whole thing is he's supposed to have that's what he's supposed to draw on for his humanity is all the memories and logs and stuff of these colonists that were eventually killed by the crystalline entity. Don't worry, we'll get there eventually. So, but yeah, this movie is just like a steaming turd.
I really wanted Picard or somebody at the end of the episode say like, computer, I'd like an order of tikka masala.
Or just, actually, I think the best thing about this episode would have been if some just character that's been in the background the entire episode would just be like, computer, end program.
It's
and
the kid. It has to be the kid at the beginning.
Yeah. Yes. And he's like, save under shittiest episode of Next Gen ever.
Do you think this one's the shittiest? Or are there other shitty ones?
No. Not
Okay.
by far. Not by far. There's way shittier episodes in this one, but this one is just like insulting because we're at the point in the series where they should not be doing things like this. I understand that this is the season where we get like people's brother, or I think Jordy's mom shows up at some point and things like that, because they're out of ideas. This is stuff that's been sitting around for a while, that this is not their A game, but at the same time it's just like, this episode was just so damn painful to watch. Way back when. I remember discussing it with people, because it's you would watch it, and then, because I was in high school contemporary to kind of when this was on, and you'd go the next day and discuss with people, and I just remember people looking like somebody had shot their dog. It was just like, it's like, we only got a few of these left, man, and this is what they did to us.
I don't know. Give them a bottle episode that makes no sense. All right.
Yeah, give them a bottle episode, but spend a ton of money on FX and set
but
design.
Don't show them the ship actually transform on the outside. We don't have that kind of money.
Don't show them the thing they actually want to see. Show them all the stuff where we could throw some cardboard boxes painted to look like rocks in the corner.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Well, do you want to know what our next episode is?
I'd love to know.
Okay, next episode is called To Thine Own Self.
Oh my gosh.
And here's our little synopsis.
Yeah, To Thine Own Self. Watch this one, because it's great.
Data suffers amnesia in a primitive society while Troy applies for a promotion.
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. The B story on this is not great.
Please tell me the Data suffers amnesia is the B story.
No. The Troy promotion thing is the B story, but the A story of Data is really great. It's actually, if you've not seen this one, it is it's probably one of the better kind of Data episodes. Like, I'll watch this one I'll probably watch it a couple times for the next time we get together and talk about it.
Nice.
But it's a really cool story, because he kind of like, it's like a primitive planet, and he just kind of stops off, and it's just like, he doesn't know who he is, and they don't know who he is. They just know that he's this kind of like strange alien guy, and there's a little mystery to solve, and yeah, it's pretty good. All
right, I'm excited then. Well, thank you for suffering with me on this one.
Oh god, and it was suffering.
We will see everybody next time.
If we are not molecularly changed into rocks before then.